Chapter 2: The Shadow upon Orant. For centuries, the kingdom of Orant stood as a beacon of strength upon the vast continent of Gede. It was the grandest of the four kingdoms, its land stretching far beyond the reach of common men, its walls high enough to challenge the very heavens. Yet, in the far reaches of its countryside, nestled between the whispering pines of the dark forest, lay Doom's village, a place now spoken of in hushed, fearful tones. The tragedy had spread like wildfire. They said the village was gone, swallowed whole by an unspeakable horror. The air in the markets of Orant buzzed with fearful whispers. Some claimed it was the work of a dark beast, a creature of nightmare that had long been dismissed as myth. Others, too afraid to utter such words, only spoke of shadows that moved where there was no light. But King James Dawes did not believe in myths. No, he was a man of war, a ruler who had seen the rise and fall of kingdoms, and to him, fear was the true enemy. Yet his wife, Queen Laura Dawes, stood firm in her beliefs.
"This is no mere tale, my king,"
she whispered in the dim candlelight of their chamber.
"Doom's village did not vanish into the wind. Something took it. And if we do not act, Orant may be next."
But James shook his head. Stories of the dark beast have plagued our lands for generations, yet never has a soul seen it. This is nothing more than the madness of terrified minds. Still, doubt gnawed at him. And so, with a heavy heart, he summoned the Council of Four, the kingdom's most trusted advisors, the guardians of its fate. As they gathered in the great hall, the air was thick with unease. "We are the mightiest of kingdoms, with warriors that have bested empires, and yet, we stood powerless as an entire village was erased. I refuse to let this shame linger." The Council of Four, a man leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "We do not even know what we are fighting, Your Majesty." Doom's village was lost in a single night. Survivors whisper of shadows and beasts, yet none can say what truly happened. Silence fell. A dreadful, suffocating silence. James clenched his jaw. He had no answer. Could it be true? Could the dark beast truly exist? If so, Orant itself was in danger. With a heavy heart, he gave his decree. Seal the gates to the ruined village. No one is to step beyond the walls. Strengthen the city's defenses. Whatever lurks in the shadows of the dark forest, it will not reach our people. The Council of Four took his words to the heart. That very night, they stood before the masses in Orient's grand marketplace, torches flickering against the cold wind. "Hear us now," one of the councilmen called. "By order of King James Dawes, none shall approach the ruins of Doom's village. The walls have been sealed. No soul shall set foot beyond, lest they invite doom upon themselves." The people murmured in fear. The weight of those words settled deep into their bones. But what they did not know, what none of them knew, was that the dark beast had already come. 3 nights passed, and the streets of Orant were silent. The once vibrant city, where laughter and music filled the air, had become a ghost of itself. Doors were locked before sunset, torches snuffed out in trembling hands. Merchants no longer peddled their wares late into the night, and the city's grand halls stood eerily still. For even though none dared speak it aloud, something was watching. Something had arrived. And soon, Orant would learn the truth of the dark beast. The Watcher of Orant. The night was restless, the cold wind carrying whispers of something unseen. Marquis Alexander, a warrior of 65 years, stood by the flickering lantern in his chamber. His frame, though touched by age, bore the scars of battles fought long before most men in Orant had even drawn breath. For 35 years, he had protected the kingdom's great wall, fending off invaders, beasts, and nightmares whispered about in hushed voices. Now, a new duty called him. The Council of Four had ordered him to the Wall of Dooms, where the ruined village met the cursed dark forest. The gates had been sealed, and none were to enter or leave. The rumors of the dark beast had reached even the noble halls of Orant, yet the king himself dismissed them as superstition. But Alexander had seen things before that others chose to ignore. With his sword strapped to his waist and his weathered cloak drawn over his broad shoulders, he stepped into the armored carriage. His wife, Sabona, insisted on joining him, despite his protests. The two soldiers assigned to him sat in silence, their expressions unreadable as the carriage rumbled across the uneven path toward the edge of Orion's dominion. The Silent Night. A small outpost lay near the wall's entrance, a modest stone structure built for Alexander and Sabona. The air was thick with unease. The silence was unnatural, the village beyond the wall nothing but scorched ruins and dying embers. Even the wind dared not howl. Night fell swallowing the land. Sabona sat awake, worry in her eyes, but Alexander reassured her with a firm hand. Still, he could not sleep. Gripping his sword and a lantern, he stepped outside. He ordered the soldiers. "I will walk the wall alone." With steady steps, he ascended the stone stairway to the watchtower, the lantern's glow barely pushing against the suffocating darkness. The Dooms village was nothing more than ashes, a land forsaken, swallowed by whatever horror had consumed it. The voices beyond the wall. At dawn, exhaustion had nearly taken him when a sound. Distant at first. Then louder. Voices. Alexander snapped awake, gripping his sword as he peered through the narrow slit of the gate's watch window. 3 figures stumbled toward the wall, a man and 2 children, their faces pale with terror. "Open the gate. Please. The monster, it will kill us. We've been trapped for days. We're starving." The man's voice cracked with desperation. Alexander's grip tightened on the gate's iron handle. No one was allowed in. Those were the orders. Yet, behind the man, beyond the ruined village, the tree swayed unnaturally, as if something massive lurked in their depths. The children's wide eyes pleaded with him, their hands clutching at the cold stone. They were just children. For a long moment, Alexander stood still, torn between duty and mercy. Then, in a low voice, he turned to his men. "Ride to the Lord. Tell him what we have seen. Tell him the wall may not hold." The soldiers hesitated, but the authority in Alexander's voice left no room for question. As their horses thundered away, he remained at the gate, his fingers ghosting over the handle. The council's verdict. Within the towering walls of the king's citadel, where golden banners of Orant draped the high stone halls, the air was thick with tension. Torches flickered against the marble pillars, casting shadows over the grand council chamber. 2 soldiers, clad in black and gold armor, stormed through the main entrance, their heavy boots echoing on the polished floors. An elderly steward, hunched with age but sharp in gaze, raised a hand to halt them. "State your purpose." The council is in deliberation, no one disturbs them without summons. The lead soldier, chest heaving from the ride, dismissed the warning. "By order of Lord Alexander, we bear urgent news from the Wall of Dooms." Without waiting for permission, they pushed past the steward, forcing their way into the council chamber. A kingdom divided. The Council of 4 was gathered around an ornate obsidian table, maps and scrolls scattered before them. Their discussion had been tense, voices sharp as they debated the fate of River Slevar, the lifeline between Orant and its rival kingdom, Floweresia. Once, the 2 lands had been allies, bound by trade and diplomacy. But that had changed when Floweresia betrayed Orant, stealing sacred gems from the Vale Caves, a cavern rumored to hold ancient power. The theft had broken their fragile peace, and in retaliation, Orant had closed the river, severing the last ties between them. Now, a desperate envoy from Floweresia knelt before the council, his robes muddied from travel. His voice shook with urgency. "My lords, I beg of you. The river is more than a border, it is our people's lifeblood. Without it, our lands turn barren, our flowers will destroy, our people starve. If not for our nobles, at least for our villagers, I plead, open the waters once more." At the head of the table, Magnus, the oldest and most formidable among the council, leaned forward, his silvered beard resting upon his armored chest. His cold eyes burned with restrained fury. "Your queen is a deceiver," Magnus growled. She has spat on our trust, twisted history to her liking, and mocked our rule. And now you come to us, pleading for mercy? The envoy's hands trembled as he raised them in surrender. My lord, the river does not belong to any one kingdom, it is a force of nature. You cannot control it. The hall as Black Theo, the most cunning of the council, struck the table with his fist. Mind your tongue, he snapped. You stand before the council of Orant. Speak with respect, or be silenced. The envoy swallowed his defiance, lowering his gaze. Forgive me, my lords. I only ask for time, to speak with our queen, to make her see reason. A heavy silence fell upon the chamber. Then, Magnus exhaled sharply. Return to your queen. Tell her that if she dares spread more falsehoods, there will be war. We will summon you when we decide the river's fate. Until then, be gone. With a heart heavy with regret, the Flower Region envoy turned away, his request unanswered. The warning from the wall. As the envoy left, the two soldiers stepped forward. They bowed, then spoke with urgency. My lords, we bring grave news from Lord Alexander. There are survivors. From the ruins of Doom's village. At that, the council stiffened. Magnus's eyes narrowed. Doom's village? Impossible. That land was burned to the ground, nothing could have survived. The soldier nodded. That is what we thought, my lord. But this morning, Lord Alexander himself found a man and 2 children outside the wall of Dooms. They claim their village was attacked by a creature unknown to them, a monster of the dark. They beg for entry into Orant. The air in the chamber grew cold. Celine Knight, the council's mysterious seer, whispered under her breath, her violet eyes darkening with unseen visions. The shadows stir. Magnus rose from his seat, his voice heavy with finality. The wall remains closed. Until we have proof of what lies beyond, no one enters. The soldiers hesitated. But my lord, what if they speak the truth? What if the children? Magnus's gaze turned sharp. I know Alexander. He is a warrior, but his heart is kind. He sees lost children and pities them. But pity is a weakness we cannot afford. Send word back, Orient's gates stay sealed. A thick silence fell, and after a moment, the soldiers lowered their heads in submission. Forgive us, my lord, one whispered. We will deliver the message. And with a heart, the fate of those at the wall, and perhaps all of Orant, was sealed.